Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a video I've been wanting to make for a very long time. If you've ever wondered how a girl born and raised in Cape Town, South Africa, Melkbos of all places, ended up living in the UK, living in Hungary, living in a cruise ship, becoming a single mother and then starting over more than once, then this video is for you. This isn't just a travel story. It's a story about taking risks, adapting to change, motherhood, heartbreak, resilience, and building a new life in a different country more than once. And trust me, there were loads of moments I never expected. So grab a drink like I have here, get comfortable, and let's have a chat. I was born and raised in Cape Town, South Africa, in a small town called Melkbos, right along the coast. And growing up, traveling overseas felt like a huge and exciting dream, especially as a young girl. It felt like a dream. International travel wasn't something we did regularly, so my first international trip was incredible. I remember it so vividly. I was 16 years old. It was just me and my mom and my brother, and my mom was a single parent. So looking back now, I appreciate that trip so much more because the extent of planning, saving and sacrifices that a single mom has to make in order to make that type of trip happen for her teenagers, it's really incredible and I'm so grateful. Traveling from South Africa to any international country is such a feat. It's so expensive. It takes so long. It's long haul flights, extensive paperwork for visas because you need a Schengen visa, especially if you're planning to go to more than one country in Europe or any other country for that matter. You have to get a visa. We unfortunately have to get a visa for most countries in the world. So you're applying for visas for yourself and for your kids. And when you're a single parent taking your kids by yourself, you need permission from the other parents. So now that I'm older and I have my own kids and I've traveled with my kids alone, I appreciate my mom even more for doing that. Sadly, you don't really realize how special that is until much later. I remember the excitement of getting our first passport and seeing movies. Like a movie I really loved growing up is What a Girl Wants. That is one of my favorite movies. So just the UK being a destination that I was going to at 16 after seeing that movie was mind-blowing. I was like, wow, it's gonna be me. I'm gonna fall off of the red bus, off the pole of the red bus and just explore and everything. And it was just, I was so excited. My brother and I were just so excited. We couldn't wait to just get there, When we did finally get there, it was a major culture shock. Everything is different, but I think because we are so westernized in South Africa and there is a lot of British influence. So a lot of the music we liked, both of us, and a lot of the movies we liked. And my mom really enjoyed British humor, so we watched Little Britain and I grew up loving Arctic Monkeys, still do. So there is just so much British influence in our family personally that it wasn't too much of a culture shock, but I think coming from a completely different country to the UK, it can be a major culture shock, but still very exciting. Of course, the exchange rate is a big deal, so you can imagine spending money to get to where you need to go, especially the UK. I like to use the example of the UK because the pound is so much stronger than the rand. There is a massive difference between the rand and the pound. So when you're coming from South Africa to the UK, of course you need more money because everything's going to seem so much more expensive here. Again, that just makes me appreciate what my mom did even more because it might not be as much now as it was back then, but again, for a single mom, that's a lot. That's a lot. I think what surprised me most about traveling to the UK was that it wasn't exactly like it always in the movies. And at 16, I think that's a valid thing to be surprised by because, the media really does warp and wangle certain things about certain countries. And in saying that, it goes for South Africa to the world. as well. You know, South Africa might look a certain way to the world, but in reality, those that know, it is an incredible place. And I don't like to compare, especially because we're talking first world and third world, but there is a lot of upsides to living in South Africa compared to the UK. Just like there is also a lot of upsides living in the UK compared to South Africa. So it really just depends on the person. When we came to the UK, we went to London first. So we spent a week in London. We stayed with my cousin and her husband. We got to see London for the first time, you know, do the typical tourist-like trip where we saw Buckingham Palace and London Eye. Got to go on the tube. It was really exciting. I just felt like such a tourist, but at the same time, like I was sort of living out my own little movie. And with my brother and my mom, that was really exciting. So after that week, we then flew over to Belgium. We decided to go and get a taste of Europe, which was really wonderful. We went to Ghent and we took a half an hour or so flight from, I think it was Heathrow to Ghent. And that plane ride was, I say plane ride, that's so funny. That flight was probably the worst and most nerve-wracking flight I've ever had in my life. The weather was really bad. It was overcast, windy, some rain, and the plane felt like it had been made by the Wright brothers. And I don't know how it held together, but it sounded like it was about to fall apart mid-air. And there was a child about 3 years old or so, really not enjoying himself and moaning and complaining to his mom in French. So it was a lot. It was a lot for half an hour, but we made it and it was an experience and it's a story I get to tell now. We made it to Belgium. It was, honestly, I feel that was actually the highlight of my trip. Sorry London, love y'all, but I really do feel like Ghent was so different, so magical. I think because I'd never really considered a European country in traveling before. I'd only looked at the UK or maybe America, you know. I never imagined what certain parts of Europe would be like. And when I finally saw it, gosh, it's so beautiful. The cobblestone roads, we were staying on a boat house on the lake. It was like half underwater, half above the water. It was really cool. The bakeries are so lovely. I took a walk around myself because it was safe enough to do so. I felt safe enough to do so. I felt really mature. I felt really grown up in a way. Like I had the opportunity to go and just stroll around and walk around myself. It was really special. I would really love to go back to Ghent. From Ghent, we drove to Paris and we spent a day out in Paris. That was also magical. Now, by this time, I was really tired, I would say, and I remember taking a nap in the van. I know my mom was not too happy about that because we were actually in Paris and we had done a lot of walking and sightseeing already and I felt so pooped and I needed to nap. And I think my mom and my brother thought I was spoiled. I can remember this clearly like it was yesterday. My mom and my brother, I think, thought I was a bit of a drama queen. So yeah, I did in fact take a nap. Terrible to say, but yes, other than that, we saw the Eiffel Tower. We did not get to go up because Greenpeace were busy up there saving the day, as they thought. So I do want to go back and go up the Eiffel Tower. I would love to experience that. But I'm still grateful that I got to see it in real life, in person. We had ice cream, we had lunch, we went to a chocolate shop. Oh my gosh, we just ate so much good food. We had so much amazing snacks, and something I feel grateful for is seeing Notre Dame. I think that is, again, a childhood dream. I mean, you see it in the movies, you don't think you're going to see it in person anytime soon, and there you are at 16, you're seeing it. So yeah, it was really amazing. And we went to castles, museums, just absolutely amazing. And after our trip in Belgium, we went back to the UK and visited Nottingham. Now that was totally different to London, of course, because we went from London being a concrete jungle to Nottingham being in the countryside. Oh my gosh, I loved it. I loved it so much. It was so beautiful. I made a really good friend at the time, and I got to sleep over at hers, spend time with her and her friends. I got to go to the movies with her and have sleepovers, so that was really nice. I tried a pub lunch as well for the first time in Nottingham. That was really good. I did have a curry. Yeah, it was just such an amazing experience, you know, just unforgettable. That definitely planted the seed for future travel goals for me, and it was like a bug I couldn't get rid of. I needed to scratch that itch, you know. I just didn't know how. So I went to beauty school dropout. I did a 3-year diploma in health and skincare, and I qualified as a somatologist. I then found out about the opportunity to go onto the cruise ships. I felt at the time, I think because I started working really early on in life, I think at the time I felt that I wasn't ready to go onto cruise ships. I felt I wasn't ready in terms of experience in my field. So I decided to stay in South Africa and instead move to Johannesburg, where I stayed with a boyfriend at the time, and I worked there to gain some experience in spas. I realized I had what it takes. I worked between Life Day Spa in Design Quarter in Fourways and Rosebank. I felt that if I could work in the spa in Johannesburg in such an elite level, I could do cruise ships. So I decided to do it. I started the process of going on board, and if you would like to know more about how you get on board a cruise ship, please let me know in the comments down below and I will make a video about that. I went for the training to go on cruises, and I waited 2 months after my training ended. I felt like it was never going to come. Some people go really quickly, some people wait a little bit longer for their contract to come, and I waited a little bit longer, but I eventually was sent to San Francisco, which is the first time I traveled by myself. It takes a very long time to get to North America from South Africa. So that was quite extreme, you know, transferring flights and things. I was nervous and I was scared, but I did it. And I was grateful that I had an experience beforehand with my mom and my brother, traveling to one country and then to another place and in between countries and back home again. I think that gave me just the little bit of backbone I needed to get through such a long and treacherous expedition. For 7 months, a ship became my home. Because our main port was San Francisco, we cruised from there to 4 islands of Hawaii, Mexico, and back every 2 weeks. We also had a dry dock in Victoria, Canada, which was for 10 days. So for 10 days I had free time in Canada. That was really amazing. It was over Christmas time. My friends and I on the ship had memorable moments on that trip for sure. It was so incredible. It was so cold, but it didn't snow. I still hadn't touched snow yet. But again, really life-changing. Never would have thought I'd end up seeing Canada. Never. In my wildest dreams. Needless to say, that experience completely changed my life because I met my ex-husband on that ship. He's from Hungary, and years later, fast forward, we got married. I went back home from the ships, and over time, eventually we decided to move to the UK. Now, this changed everything completely for me because I now had children, not just children, but twins. They were 4.5, and we traveled to the UK, myself and my twins, as my husband at the time was already there working and preparing for us to get there. So we then flew over to the UK, and that was the first time I traveled with my children. It was interesting. They were actually really good. They're really good travelers in general, especially in like car, long haul, long distance traveling. They're very calm and they're very good. So I was grateful to them for the way that they handled the flights and the traveling, because honestly, they surprised me for 4.5-year-old twin boys. Wow. I did make sure to bring fun packs and keep them entertained and make sure that they were all sorted so that they wouldn't get bored and miserable. So that really helped. So when we got to the UK, 4 months later, COVID happened and lockdown was upon us. And when everything closed down, because I worked in a leisure centre, we had to make the decision whether we were going to stay in the UK and struggle or whether we were going to move, and where were we going to move to. So we decided to move to Hungary, to my ex-husband's family home, instead of going to South Africa, because South Africa is very far. It was really far away. I wouldn't have been able to work. We didn't have much money as it was, because we didn't know how long it was going to be till lockdown ended. So eventually people realized, this isn't going to work. We need to make a different plan. So we went to Hungary for approximately 11 months. And that was probably the darkest time of my life. I still don't really know how I got through that. I definitely didn't want to be there. And that is a whole nother story for another day. Again, if you would like to know more about that experience, let me know. But major culture shock, completely different language. I had to try and decipher and learn a couple of phrases in Hungarian just to get by. Weirdly enough, I could say a couple of things in Hungarian. Hogy vagy? Igen, nem tudom. Little things. But personally, I wouldn't go back. I might do if I had a good reason and a good girls trip maybe, or if my sons wanted to see Budapest one day, that I would take them. But I'm so traumatized. Again, another story for another day. So because of COVID, added another level to, the whole situation, and eventually we came home. I decided to separate from my ex and went home, back to South Africa, back to Cape Town. 2 months later, after arriving in Cape Town, my father passed away, and my youngest son, the youngest twin, went into hospital for a very long time. It took a very long journey for him to recover, and then eventually when he was discharged from hospital, we were able to go back to the UK, because when I was living there the first time with my ex-husband, I worked for 1 month out of the 4 months in a massage center. And after COVID and lockdown and everything had lifted, I was able and blessed enough to get my job back. The company I worked for applied for sponsorship license, and I was able to get my job back, and I eventually moved back to the UK with my twins as a single mom. That was a whole nother story again on its own. It was challenging, exciting, rewarding, mind-blowing. It was definitely, I think, what I needed to push me forward even further as a mom. So what looked like 5 steps backwards ended up being 10 steps forward, because I went from feeling unsure, heartbroken, financially unsure, just knowing I wanted to still go somewhere, preferably the UK, but never really knowing how. It was just in the back of my mind. I considered Australia, New Zealand, I considered a few other countries. I did, merely because I was a single mom, and I knew as a beauty therapist I was not going to be able to provide a life that I would have loved to provide for my kids, like my dad did for myself and my brother in South Africa. If I was earning a salary of a beauty therapist, I would have never been able to do it, in my opinion. So once I had experience working on a cruise ship, I knew that I would need to move overseas in order to create a life for my kids that I felt was what they deserved and what I felt I wanted to give them. Eventually, I decided to just try and go back, and I did. I came back to the UK by myself, and just before I came back, I met my now husband. We met on Hinge, and we spoke for a very long time, and he came to South Africa. He decided it was too long before I was going over. I was going over with my work, but he decided he wanted to see me earlier, so he came to Cape Town for 9 days, spent time together. That was amazing. Still didn't let my kids meet him. And then a few months after that, or I think possibly a year, Oh, it took long. Immigration takes so long. There's so much paperwork, so much money that goes into it. We were waiting for Hayden to become healthy enough for me to be able to go. So there was a lot going on at the time, and eventually it all landed up being at the right time, and I came back to the UK. And even though we lived 3 hours apart, Sean and we made it work, and it was an incredible year. Very hard work, but such an incredible year. And eventually we had to go back to Cape Town because I was appointed executrix of my late father's estate. I had to go back to South Africa and take care of all of those things. We had to deal with visa paperwork, and because it took so long, Sean decided we needed a holiday. So we had a holiday in Turkey. I flew to Turkey and he flew to Turkey from the UK. I flew to Turkey from South Africa. We met in Turkey. And we had a holiday. And what do you know? We now have a beautiful son named Nolan. And he's 18 months old. After getting back to Cape Town, a couple of weeks after that, I found out I was pregnant. And that's when the new journey began. We started talking about what are we going to do, where are we going to stay, what is our plan. It became quite clear that moving back to the UK was the best plan because it is where the boys and I would like to have been. It is where Sean is from. His whole life he's been here in Warwickshire. So it's been quite an easy process in terms of decision, but extremely hard in terms of procedure. The paperwork, oh my goodness. The cost of immigration to travel with children, not just yourself, is so extensive. It is extreme, and I would be more than happy to make a video breaking down all the costs and everything that it takes to move overseas, whether you are married to a British partner or whether you're going to work. There is a lot of paperwork involved. Whether you are going to work, whether you're going to travel, or whether you are married or in a relationship, there is a lot you need to do to make sure that you come here safely, legally, and happily. The difference is that this time it's not temporary and we do not have an end in sight. We are here indefinitely. We will be renewing our visas every 2.5 years until the 5-year mark, and then we will be on our journey towards citizenship. My son Nolan has a British passport like his daddy. The boys and I are just gonna have to get Schengen visas if we want to travel anymore, and eventually we won't have to. But for now, this is where we are, and we are so happy to finally be here. It's incredible to finally be reunited as a family and feel like you are home. That's how we feel here. I know the boys do. I definitely do. Don't get me wrong, I love Cape Town. I miss Cape Town, but this is home now. So for anybody who would like to move abroad for work, travel, or to live there permanently, maybe you're married or in a relationship, please let me know if you would like any advice or any detailed videos about all of those things. Let me know in the comments below and I'd be happy to make that for you. If you've made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for listening to my story. It honestly feels a bit emotional sharing everything, but I kept it together. When you're living through those moments, you don't realize how it's all just becoming part of your life's journey. So I'd love to know in the comments, have you ever moved countries? Would you like to? If you do, where would you like to move to? I read every single comment and I'd love to hear your stories too. If you've enjoyed this chat, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications because I have many more videos coming up. If you're interested in seeing that, then please do like, subscribe, and follow along the journey. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next one. Bye.